Sharks fans are showing a newfound confidence in Mike Grier and the direction of the franchise.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesdays here at the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, or at least 3 times a week right now during the off season. So if you want to be an everydayer, or at least know when the next episode is going to come out, make sure you're following wherever you get podcasts, or you can also watch this on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be looking at the confidence ratings rankings for the San Jose Sharks and how this team is, at least in the fans' eyes and people who just watch the Sharks and the greater public think of what Mike Grier has done with this roster and kind of the first major steps of this rebuild. So we're going to also look at kind of where Mike Grier has his wins from his trades that maybe we were a little meh on at first, and kind of then talk about what's next for Mike Grier as he continues to kind of navigate this rebuild. So before we get to all that, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So, The Athletic put out their 9th annual version of the confidence rankings for each NHL team. They had nearly 10,000 responses from fans grading their favorite teams and 250 responses grading every team. You guys are a special breed if you sat there and rated every team. But basically, it's their whole thing is it's not a perfect system, but they just want to kind of get the feel, the vibe for each, how each front office is doing. They ask questions based on kind of on 6 categories. So the roster building, cap management, draft and development, trading, free agency, and the vision. And the Sharks finished at number 13 this year. After last year, they were near the bottom of the league. So last year they were 29th. This year they have jumped up to 13. So really good. If you have The Athletic, I highly recommend you go check it out. You can kind of see where the other teams are, but I want to focus kind of mainly on the Sharks here. And I did pull up the kind of their screen grab of for the report card for it. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see. If not, I will go through it. So the fan base, I'm going to focus mainly on the fan base here because 1, you get a larger sample size, and 2, I think with the fan base, yes, it's going to be more optimistic, but I think that's the opinion that accounts more. I don't know. I'm probably just being biased, but who cares? It's a show about the Sharks by a Sharks fan, so of course I'm going to be biased. Roster building. 3.9 out of 5, which was good for a B minus, 15th in the NHL. Cap management B at 4.1% out of 5, 13th in the NHL, which I think we'll kind of talk about these a little bit more here in a second. But draft and development B plus, which I actually kind of feel it might be a little tad low, but anyway, 4.2, 7th in the NHL. Trading C plus, 3.6, 17th in the NHL. Free agency B minus, 3.3, 15th in the free 15th in the NHL. Vision B plus, 4.5, 7th in the NHL for a total of a B 4.0, 13th in the NHL. The fan base, 92% more confident than they were over the last year. 2% less confident. I don't know what those 2% want, to be honest. If you're feeling less confident, I don't know how you can't feel more confident. Unless you're like one of those they need to win right now team people, I guess. Maybe you're feeling less confident that they're going to win now. But I think though with that, Mike Grier in a short amount of time has really turned around, I think, especially the vision, right? The long-term vision of this team. And you see now we've had a couple of Mike Grier drafts. You see what he is trying to build, right? A skilled, competitive team, especially in the forward departments, right? And I know a lot of people, especially when Mike Grier first got hired, they were worried like, oh, is he just going to pick big guys and stuff? And yes, he has picked, the guys he has picked are plenty of big guys in there. Kasper Halttunen, big dude, right? 6'2", 210, 6'2", 6'3", 210 pounds, right? Quint Musty, 6'2", 200 pounds before he was 18 years old. Some of the forward that he's, Igor Chernyshov's, pretty big guy as well. But he's picked plenty of skilled players as well. Will Smith, touch under, 6 foot, 180 pounds. Mackin Celebrini, 6 foot, close to 200 pounds. But super skilled guys, especially in the forward department. The defense were still, he's definitely leans towards bigger players, right? Acquiring Shakir Mukhamadullin and, picking Sam Dickinson. But, he's taken swings on guys like Leo Wallinius, who's a little bit smaller guy, Luca Cagnoni, I think the value in the fourth. And you can see the vision of, I want a skilled competitive team. And then even like some of the trade, Philip Beestead acquiring, trading back and getting Philip Beestead, David Edstrom, again, big but very skilled players here, and you can see where this thing is headed for the Sharks. And I know there's still a portion of the fan base who is very much like, don't tank, you should try to win every year and stuff like that. But I think though for the Sharks, this was the right move, right? I mean, you got Mackin Celebrini, right? There's a reason why there's such a buzz behind the franchise, is because you got you got the best player in the draft, and you have a legitimate superstar in the making in Mackin Celebrini. This is massive for the Sharks, and this is why you lost all those games. And you're going to pair him with Will Smith, you're going to pair him with William Eklund, and you have Kasper Halttunen and Quentin Musty, and whatever else the Sharks continue to do going forward. I don't see how you can't be confident, and at least in Mike Grier's vision. There could be some questions about the execution and stuff, and there's always going to be questions about the execution. I've had my questions, about some of the execution of kind of smaller things, but in the end, right, the whole thing is like, your Barclay Goodrows or trading for the guys like that. Like, in the end, that stuff's not going to matter as long as Mackin Celebrini and Will Smith and William Eklund and Sam Dickinson and all these guys turn out to what we expect them to be, and the Sharks are winning playoff games and competing again. Then we'll brush past the Goodrows and the Studnikas and some of those potential question marks with those. And that, again, no GM is going to be 100% right, and no GM is also going to be 100% wrong. They're going to get their wins and losses throughout the process, but as long as you're, I think, stacking more wins, and I think Mike Grier, at least in this part, in the tear down and gather assets and trying to get quality blue chip pieces for the Sharks, he's had more wins than losses, I would say. And we'll talk about some of those wins and talk about the Erik Karlsson trade, which is now a year old, and how that could be setting up the franchise for Hugh, kind of their next success here, and what just kind of the feeling after a year from that, and talk about kind of what's next, I think, for Mike Grier in the Sharks. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So, join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show can get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And when you guys are done checking out this show, make sure you guys go check out the Locked On NHL show for your second listen of the day. Excuse me. Locked On NHL provides you a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day. We're still doing 5 episodes a week. We're on the national show with national experts and local insights on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tuesday, Seth and I picked all of our breakout players we picked breakout players from every team in the Western Conference. So really fun episode, of course. Spoiler, I picked William Eklund. I think he's going to, as I said on here, I'm going to continue to say it. I think Eklund leads the team in points, and I think that point number starts with a 7. So, but I think the wins, right? Kind of looking at, especially for Mike Grier, and kind of what I think is been building for this confidence, and I think the cap management, right? And shedding these big contracts, right? You look at what Mike Grier has done since he got here, right? Brent Burns and his $8 million. I know. And yes, the Sharks are still retaining cap, and I think they have $7 million of dead cap space this year, and what's going to be another bad season for the Sharks. And you could argue that maybe Mike Grier didn't get enough for it. But I think it's also hard to say until we kind of see how these deals come to fruition with the draft picks and stuff. And getting a guy like Quentin Musty, and you could say the Sharks lucked out to getting Quentin Musty. Well, that's part of the draft game, is getting lucky on who is available and how they develop and all that stuff. So, but still, right? Brent Burns, they traded. That was kind of the first big piece. And yes, I know the Sharks still have one more year left on his deal at $2.72 million, but then that'll be gone, right? Erik Karlsson. Actually, well, we don't want Erik Karlsson. Tomas Hertl, trading Tomas Hertl just after signing him to a massive extension, the 8 years at 12, whatever, 1375. There you go. You traded him 2 years in. Not even 2 years in, a guy who had a full no movement clause. Yes, and you can debate if the Sharks got enough or whatever, but getting an unprotected first-round pick from Vegas, which we don't, Vegas's team, I don't know if you looked at their Puckpedia page, little iffy. And yes, they're going to have to retain, a little over $1 million for the next 5 seasons now, $1.38751. I do like the 501, the $1 there at the end. But again, for a team right now which is swimming in cap space, by the time they start to have to worry about cap space, that deal is going to be coming off the books here, right? So, also trading Timo Meier before he was due a contract, and he got, he signed an 8-year, $8 million contract. And at the time we were like, okay, first round pick. Yeah, maybe another. And then you got a second round pick that could have been a first round pick, and Shakira Mukamadulin, which kind of felt like, man, Fabian Zetterlund, who everyone was like, what's, especially when he first got here and he put up 3 points in 22 games. now fast forward, right? Fabian Zetterlund looks like a piece of the core that you compare with Eklund and Celebrini and Smith for the foreseeable future. We just did a podcast about why I'm totally fine writing him a 5x5 check this, next off season if he continues to perform at the way we expect him to perform. That's a win right there. Getting a guy like Fabian. Yes, Timo Meier is a better player than Fabian Zetterlund, but you also got Quentin Musty out of the deal, who looks pretty good himself. You got Shakir Mukumadulin, who had an amazing season in the AHL. And you didn't have to pay Timo Meier $8 million. And I was very critical on kind of at the time, like I thought they should have kept Timo Meier. I was wrong. It was 100% the right move to trade Timo Meier, get a boatload of assets, and really focus on building this thing up the right way. And I think the Erik Karlsson trade, right? And we'll revisit that here right now. So it's been 1 year. On August 6th, Sharks traded Erik Karlsson. They retained $1.5 million for the next 3 seasons. And again, by the time the Sharks have to start paying guys, that money's going to be off the books. Rem Pitlick, Dylan Hamelic, the Sharks did have to give up 2026 third-round pick. They received Mikael Granlund, Jan Ruda, Mike Hoffman, 2024 first-round pick, which ended up being 14th overall. And then the Canadians got Petrie and Casey DeSmith, Nathan Guerin, a 2025 second-round pick, I think, they had to eat some, I forget all the money, whatever. But, looking back, you got rid of Erik Karlsson's massive contract, and Erik Karlsson was a great player, right? He had a career season. Mike Grier got rid of him when his value at his absolute highest, especially after 18 months before, where that contract was considered the worst, if not one of the worst contracts in the NHL, an absolute albatross on the Sharks cap sheet. You let Erik Karlsson cook, and then you traded him when his value was the highest, and getting a first-round pick, which ended up turning into Sam Dickinson, which is probably going to be a future number 1 defenseman for the Sharks, or at least a first pairing defenseman. Looks great. Plus, and Mike Hoffman, whatever, and Jan Ruda has been serviceable, but Mikael Granlund, you can still trade him this coming season. And if Mikael Granlund continues to play the way we saw Mikael Granlund play last year, you're going to get a really nice asset for him, whether it's a second-round pick. I know there's going to be some cap shenanigans to try to maybe squeeze in a $5 million player, but it's not impossible. And, if a team really wants to add Mikael Granlund, they're going to make it work to add Mikael Granlund, right? And you could be adding another second-round pick to the Sharks' war chest, which going into next season, they're going to have 2 first-round picks, at least 1 second-round pick. So you're probably looking at realistically, and then if they get another second-round pick, you're going to have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds, most likely. And that's if they don't really trade anything else, whether, we'll dig into who they could potentially trade at some point. But, he's done a good job of getting assets, flipping them, and I think Mikael Granlund is going to be a flip at some point, and just kind of being aggressive when the time is to be aggressive there. And I think that's going to be a big thing for Mike Grier. We'll talk about kind of what's next is when does he start being aggressive with moving this rebuild along, and so you don't end up like our good friend Joe with the Buffalo Sabres, where you're just kind of stuck in this forever rebuild. And we'll kind of talk about that next. But I think, though, some of these big moves, maybe at the time we might have been a little disappointed, but getting some distance from them, he's Mike Grier has done a really good job of setting the Sharks up for a long, sustainable future success. Right now, if you've listened to the show for any period of time, how long have you heard me, utter those words? Sustainable future success. Right? You don't want to be a flash in the pan team who kind of like the Kraken, right, where you maybe make the second round one year and then you're kind of out of the playoffs. And we kind of, like you want this thing to be like where you're kind of like where like the Avalanche did, right? Where you're making the playoffs and like you kind of keep going further and further until you finally break through. Like that's what you want to be. And you want to be one of those teams who's going to be, potential 3, 4, 5 year window of realistic contention. So yeah, we'll talk about kind of what's next for the Sharks and how Mike Grier needs to kind of continue to be aggressive in with this rebuild. So we'll get to that here just 1 second. Baseball means summer, and I know summer is winding down and baseball season is still winding down, but now's the perfect time to go out and catch a game. If you want to do that, Game Time is the place to go. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Of course, the best thing about it is you can actually see what your seats are like. I know going to Oracle Park, there's no bad seats, but not every park is Oracle Park. And sometimes you want to make sure that you have a good seat, especially if you go to one of those older stadiums and they don't really have sometimes the best views. So with Game Time, you can actually see what your seats are going to look like before you go to check out. 2 taps, you can have tickets delivered straight to your phone. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. Of course, right? Tearing it down is fun. It's easy. But building it back up is a hard part. I think that's what's next for Mike Grier, right? And again, we know the Sharks, this team is not going to be competitive this year, right? They're going to win a couple more games, right? But they're still probably a bottom 3 to 5 team this season, especially if the goaltending falls apart, right? If you take Vanacek and or Mackenzie Blackwood both miss a large portion of time due to injuries, or right, like those guys have also. I know Blackwood played well last year, but if he slides back to how he was playing the last 2 years with the Devils, if you take Vanacek, kind of plays like how he did last year, especially in the playoff, like there's a realistic world where maybe the goaltending is a big issue, and that's where we're kind of harping on all season. But we do expect this team to be at least more competitive, more fun to watch every night with Celebrini and Smith and Eklund and Zetterlund, and I like Henry Thrun and Ty Emberson, and Wallman's going to be fun, and Tyler Toffoli. Like this team's going to be more fun, right? At least, hopefully, that's the hope on a night in, night out basis is a more fun, competitive team. But in the long run, they're probably not going to add a ton more wins. So I think though is for this vision, right? And you've done a good job of, clearing the cap and kind of setting things up for when you do have to pay Mackin Celebrini and pay Will Smith and pay William Eklund, who are all, they progress the way we think they are, going to be deserving of big contracts. I'm thinking like $7+ million, 8, 9, 10 for Celebrini if he comes out and hits the ground running. I don't think that's unrealistic to talk about Mackin Celebrini signing, an 8-year contract at $10 million, which would probably feel like a steal if Celebrini kind of hits what we think he's going to hit. But yeah, that's promise for future Mike Grier and future Sharks, and he's done a good job of kind of setting them up for success in that range. But I still think, though, you have to kind of start adding pieces, right? And we saw that this offseason, getting Alex Wenberg and getting Tyler Toffoli. And I think not being afraid to maybe kind of pull the cord on some of these guys. And you've seen that already a little bit with like the Ozzy Weisbot trade, right? There was no realistic path, I think, for Ozzy Weisbot to become an impact player for the San Jose Sharks. He just wasn't really doing much in the AHL, and they traded him. And yeah, of course, what they got went to Russia, and that's kind of the end of that trade. But like he, kind of took a chance on doing something there. And you wonder if guys like Robbins or Bordelot or, some of these guys who just haven't quite figured it out, if Mike Grier might be aggressive in trading those guys for pieces that the Sharks might need sooner rather than later, whether it's defensive help, right? Getting another Shakir Mukhamadullin-like player, where guy who's, or Jack Thompson-like guy, where the guy is just about NHL ready, maybe needs another year or so. Let's maybe he's not working out in your system. Maybe there's a log jam in your system. Let me trade one of these forwards where I have a bajillion forwards to go get one of those. Or if a young NHL, I don't want to say superstar, but if a young NHL player becomes available, again, you have a lot of assets at your disposal, and 2 first-round picks this year, another second-round pick. Like, is he aggressive in getting young NHL talent to go with your Celebrinis and your Smiths and your Eklunds, especially if those guys show signs early, right? And that's something I'm going to kind of really keep in mind is that we talked about Joe from Locked On Sabres, is if those guys show signs that they're, going to be the guys that we expect them to be, I don't think you can be too aggressive in surrounding them with NHL caliber talent and starting to kind of make that push, because Celebrini, Smith, and Eklund, those are your 3 most important players. And if they show signs that they're ready to start competing sooner rather than later, you don't want to like take the training wheels off and let them go and try to go be competitive, because you have a soon to be really clean cap sheet, a ton of young assets. And if you maybe have to trade some of those young assets to go get guys who can help push things forward, then sometimes you have to make those aggressive moves, and those will be plenty of fun discussions if things go as well. But I think for Mike Grier, it's going to be see what these guys can do, and when do I start pushing my chips in to see if this team can be sustainably competitive, right? No flash in the pan, but be sustainably competitive, especially if those young guys show to be what we think they're going to be. So that's going to be it for me today. Go check out Locked On NHL podcast. Go check out any of the other awesome Bay Area podcasts. I'm sure Locked On Niners, of course, not much to talk about. It's like an Ayuk trade maybe or something. No, plenty of stuff. Go check out Locked On Niners. Even if you're not a Niners fan, just the drama behind what's going on with the Niners right now is, I think it's just too good to pass up. So go check out that. Of course, you got Locked On Warriors with Steph Curry playing in the Olympics. I know the Locked On NBA channel, they've been covering the Olympics pretty hard. Then you have Locked On A's, Locked On Giants, plenty of stuff after the trade deadline. The Giants, maybe they make a playoff push. Who knows what the Giants do? So yeah, plenty of good stuff here at Locked On NHL. Follow Locked On Sharks Review podcast. Watch on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Until probably tomorrow, if not Friday, we'll talk about Leo Salim Wallenius. Till then, bye, friends.